Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disruption Talks, where we invite top experts to discuss digital acceleration, winning strategies, innovation, and scaling products. Today, together with me is Roberto Carisi, Global Director of Solution Engineering at Onfido. Hi, Roberto. How are you?
Hi, Mateus. Thanks for having me. I'm good, thanks. How is it going?
It's good. It's good. Let's kick off then. Can you briefly introduce yourself? What's your story, and maybe tell us a bit more about Onfido and your role and your team's role at Onfido.
Sure, absolutely. As you said, I'm Roberto Carisi. I live in London now since 12 years. I'm originally Italian, and I'm also originally a solution engineer. So basically a developer. So studying engineering, coding, started as a developer, then transitioned pretty quickly after 6 months, far away from development. I really realized I like to speak with people and solve a people problem more than coding. So my path was like from there, I did entrepreneurship scholarship, studied there, and moved back in account management, like far away from the technology. But then I realized I missed technology, and then I discovered the role of solution engineering, and that's how I moved back in this role that is a bit of a hybrid between technology and business, is actually bridging those two. And I started 10 years ago in the space of solution engineering, and after a few kind of role as an individual contributor in tech company like PayPal, Amazon, and Prime Video, I'm now in Onfido. In Onfido, I started as an individual contributor, and then I moved to start leading a team, and then a larger team, and now I lead the global team for solution engineering. What Onfido does is actually identity verification, specifically digital identity verification. So to bring a problem close to home for many people, if you imagine when you open a Revolut account or a Wise account, and you take a picture of your passport and a selfie, and sometimes a picture of utility bill, we are the technology provider behind that. So we are the company that provide that check that that document is genuine, that you are the person in front of the document, and ultimately we give the information to the Revolut or Wise of the case that you are allowed to open their bank account because your identity is being proved by us. So that's what we do. What my team does is actually a team of problem solvers. So we solve business problem through technology, and that's what we do day in and day out.
So you kind of mentioned that at some point, let's say you got tired a bit with just coding and you wanted to work more with people. Um, today, I would like to talk with you on how solution engineering allows organizations and products to scale. Um, uh, let's start with a very broad question. Like you kind of touch on this topic, but what's your take on the role of engineering in this process, in sales, in onboarding? Uh, like, do you think it's important to have engineering here, or should it be siloed? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, engineering is basically the modern definition of problem solving. So someone that can solve problem. And then engineer, you have engineer from a lot of different breed. Software engineer is just one of them. So if you think about SaaS company like software as a service, most of the engineering is actually software engineering because we write code and technical product. But if you think about engineering more broadly, the ability of an engineer to identify a problem, think about a possible solution in a broad spectrum and narrow down the best solution to apply and then implement that solution. That is for me the definition of engineering. So in today's sales world for SaaS, that's more and more important because more often than not, the customer doesn't really know exactly what they want. So back 20, 30 years ago, if you imagine you go and want to buy a printer, you know it already, or a cell phone or a camera, you know the list of specs. Everybody's advertising the specs. So you go and say, I want a printer with this characteristic, this number of color, and this page per minute. And then is about the provider to give you what you want. But now it's different. People they have a broad pain. They say, I'm really struggling. I'm losing customer when they try to sign up to my bank account. And that's the problem, but they don't really know. There isn't a single silver bullet solution. So the engineering part is we work with the sales team to really identify what is the core of the problem. And then out of all we know about the possible solutions, how do we find the best one for that specific customer and use case? So engineering is more and more crucial. In fact, most of the company, they start having a sales function that is evolving. So it's not just the founder or the first few salespeople. They more and more rely on a technical expert. It can be called solution engineer, solution architect, pre-sales engineer, to really provide that problem-solving capability. And then when you go on, the specific hard skill of coding and software development becomes relevant when the product is complex. You will end up having issues in the integration phase. So the customer really needs help to bring that product live in their environment. And that's where the ability to work with their own developer becomes really crucial to make them feel like understood and cared for.
So we see nowadays more and more CEOs like having engineering background. Do you think it's a future that we are like also in sales, head of sales or VP of sales will be former engineers? Is it going to become like a let's say like a digital literacy that we all needs to be engineered and engineers and then move into different spaces, or it's not?
It's funny. It's funny you quoted these two personas because it seems like we prepared, but we didn't on this part. But both our CEO and our VP of sales for EMEA are actually engineer by training. So our CEO is retiring after next year. So he's been working a long time, but formally he was trained as a telecommunication engineer, while our VP of sales for EMEA is actually my former boss. He used to be the global head of solution engineering, and he is actually a software engineer by training. And I think that is the shift we are seeing. Like the more and more, in order to build a company, guide the company, or guide the sales team, you really need to deeply understand what you're doing and how you're doing. So the more we look at technology company, like technology product, the more engineers just come with that natural understanding of the technology, and also that's why they got driven in that company. And the more curious you are about solving problem, the more you get involved, you learn more about the technology, and that seems to be a natural evolution. I don't think we will have like 90% of CEO that are former engineer, but it's good to see that that is a path. While back 20 years ago, the normal path was probably business school, consulting, and that type of approach. While now, those are things you can learn on the job, or you can learn after 20 years of experience in the technical space. You can compensate with the education about business, but the core is really understanding what you're building and why you're building it.
Cool. So I would like to scratch a bit, deeper over the surface of what is, in your opinion, the role of the solution engineering, in particularly in scaling the such a tech product as Onfido? Like, how does it impact the organization, and what value does it bring? And if you could give us a bit more of a let's say a view behind the curtains, what do you do kind of daily?
Yeah, sure. So sales engineering or solution engineering is a very broad term. So any company might have the same title but doing different things. So in Onfido, the way we define the focus of my team is actually on three pillars. One is driving sales. The second one is actually helping product. By helping product, I mean helping product building stuff that we can sell, that the market want, but also that we help product to bring to market what they build. And then the third pillar is actually collaboration, helping each other. So touching on those three pillars, the first one is self-explanatory. We are part of the sales organization. Our number one job is to help driving sale. We get paid commission on the sales we drive. So that is really our core job. and that is more or less unanimously agreed on. The second pillar is crucial for us because product needs to have feedback from the market. So they need to know how things are going. Is the customer liking this feature? Are the customer struggling to integrate this new feature? Are the customer need fulfilled by what we built? And they don't have, unfortunately, that direct line of communication with the customers because they don't have a direct relationship with most customers, and they need a bridge. So they need a bridge between themselves and the market. And the solution engineering team is actually that bridge. It could, in theory, be the salespeople or the account manager, that bridge. But the problem is that they lack that deep knowledge and understanding of the technology. So they cannot speak the same language of the product manager and the engineering team inside the company. So that's why we work as a bridge there. And um, it's important also to define the expectation so that the people in the team know how much time to dedicate to that. And that's why we define this three pillar, and everybody in my team knows that this is our second pillar. That means if you're not selling something and speaking with customer, you should be working on making the product better. So when you have a bit of spare time, say, I don't know what to do this hour, like, let me work with product. And so we help the product bringing feedback in. We have a tool where we collect the insight from the market, but also we have a concept of subject matter expert in my team, where everyone in the team is a subject matter expert of a specific product, a specific feature of a product, depending on the seniority, they will have different expertise. But what this really means is actually they are kind of an extended function of the product team and engineering team building that product. So they can be consulted or just informed sometime along the development of the product, so they can provide feedback and say, hey, I know this makes sense, but I know by experience the customer is trying to use this product in a different way. So let's try to understand why, and let's see what we can change in the way the product is built to accommodate this customer. And by the way, I'm also speaking with my other solution engineering in the team, so I know other three customers are looking to use it in this same way. So this is the subject matter expertise that they bring in. And also to the team, they work as a funnel for all the requests and information. So not everyone in my team needs to go to the same product manager asking potentially the same question about the product, but this subject matter expert is kind of almost having a sort of a product manager in our team for that line of product. Now, when you scale it to all the product and all the feature, you realize how you save a lot of time on both sides of communication that will be just repeated and creating confusion. And you have a single voice in and out. And so this is the first part, like how we help the product team to build. The second part is like often when we build something is in an alpha or a beta stage. And in order to move to the next stage, we need the market feedback. We need to have data that we collect on how is this feature working so we can improve, fix bugs before going to general availability. So my team is actually driving this adoption with the customer. So we know what the customer need, what is their appetite to risk, how crucial is a specific feature or line of business for them. So we are the one that we can work with the customer to adopt a product that is in beta, giving them confidence that we're there, holding their hand through the not just the sales process, but also through the integration and the live phase. And we're there to make sure they feel like anything that goes wrong, we are there to help and they have the direct relationship with us. So we also drive this adoption of early product in the market.
So before we will jump into the more details on what are your tips on how to scale the team, build the team, one question that comes to my mind for the founders, for the organizations that still don't have this function within the organization, the solution engineering, and maybe consider this or should consider this, what are your tips? What would be your thought process when considering establishing such a team as yours? When do you believe it makes sense? Are there any aspects to consider? Is there a right time to consider? to set up such a unit?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a good time, and in fact, when you look at very small early days startup like 10, 15, 20 people, you very rarely find a solution engineer. Maybe find someone that is kind of doing the solution engineering job, but is not formally titled as a solution engineer. And and that's because at the beginning, if you have a company that is engineering driven, you have a lot of engineer and product people, and even the sales team is just one or two people trying to go and gain interest in the market. And if they need someone to support on the product level, they loop in a product manager or a developer lead to actually talk about the product. But that cannot scale. So as soon as you start having a broader customer base you're going after, so as soon as you start having a proper dedicated sales team, that can be 5, 6 people, and if you think about how many meetings you want these people to have, you can't have a product manager looped in all these meetings because they would be disrupted from their day-to-day jobs. So that's when I think it makes sense starting in introducing the solution engineering. And then as a first step, usually you can have maybe one solution engineer that is part of the sales team, so directly reporting into the sales manager. And you can have maybe a balance of one solution engineer for 3 or 4 salespeople. And then when you start growing a bit more and you start having maybe 3, 4 solution engineer, you might want to consider having its own entity as a team where they can decide how to share knowledge properly, how to have their own team meeting and structure, how to prioritize in a bit more independent way from if they were reporting into the sales team. So that would be the phase. And based on that, the size of the company, it really depends. You can have that when you're maybe a 30, 40 people company. Sometimes you start having that when you are 100 people company. If you really focus on building before and then you were just selling via kind of inbound request.
You mentioned that in this team, like you have more than one, many experts in your team. So I would like to talk for a moment a bit on, like you said, that you have those subject matter experts. You mentioned yourself that like you were an engineer. What are the, let's say, characteristics, traits to look for in those new hires, new solution engineers in your team? Are there any, specific things you should look when hiring such people?
Yeah,
Selecting them from your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing for me is curiosity. Like, it doesn't matter where people come from. The key way to be successful as a solution engineer is to have the curiosity to learn about the problem, curiosity about learning about new technology, curiosity about finding new solution. And the reason is that if we go back to the core definition of what we are at heart, is actually we're people that solve business problem through technology. So if you unpack that and you want to see, okay, what type of skill do I need? You find that you have two stream of people that merge and become a solution engineer. One is people that historically solved business problem, not through technology necessarily. So these are people that come from background as a account manager, business school, and things like that. And then you have through technology piece of the definition, that these are people that really started their career in technology or they're passionate about technology, but they develop a even bigger passion to solve human problem or business problem through their technology skill. So if you think about these two streams, you have people that are more business savvy and people that are more techies, we call them. And they both need to go through a little bit of a journey where they get out of their comfort zone and start upskilling themselves in the other side of the spectrum. So in my team, I have both. I have people that are very technical, engineer, people that were in research, machine learning, that just wanted to, basically they want to talk to people, solve problem, and use more creativity on a personal level. And then people that instead they started as account manager and they realized that, oh, actually, I like the technology. I like to learn more. I like to feel like I'm learning kind of hard piece of technology that then I can reuse. And they merge in the middle. Um, Usually they stay a bit in their area of expertise. So the people that come from a business perspective, rarely they will jump in and look at code, source code issues for a customer, for example. They rarely also enjoy going so far to the other side of the spectrum as possible. And on the flip side, maybe the people that are more technical, uh, they they don't go as far in the customer engagement to stay engaged on a 6, 12 month long project where it becomes a lot of project management and uh, politics inside an account to close a deal. But that is just because their original passion is probably still reside on where they came from, but they find this inner kind of motivation of mixing the two. And I'm one of came from the technical side of the spectrum, felt was out of place. I jumped a bit too far on the other side of the spectrum, and then I went back in the middle from both sides.
Like you said, those are those two profiles. Uh, any tips on which profile to bet first? Like, or are there any criteria that that could help making this decision? Let's say you have this, you're in front of this first hire. You want to hire the first solution engineer as a manager, founder, C-level, doesn't matter. And do you have those, in your recruitment pipeline or in your team, those different profiles? Any tips on, where to bet first?
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think there isn't a silver bullet because for a few reasons, like two actually the spectrum of when hiring, I think there are two sides of the spectrum. This more business or more technical, and then there is also the level of seniority of the people in the team, more junior or more senior. And as a first hire, I would say the more junior, more senior is probably not a conversation to have. You want to start with someone that has quite a good seniority. And the reason for that is that, especially at the beginning, there is a lot of ambiguity. So you want to have someone that is able to deal with ambiguity. Probably the scope of the team will not be defined. Maybe the team will not be defined. So you need to have someone that is self-driven, that they can prioritize the work themselves. They're able to say no to the right thing, to prioritize on what they know is crucial. So I would say as a first hire, you want to stay on the senior level. But then technology or business focus really depends on what you have in the team. And this is a rule that is valid even later. It's valid always, basically. But especially at the beginning, you don't want to hire a profile that has an 80% overlap with the skill set that you already have in the engineering team or in the sales team. So I would say if you have someone that is if you have a sales team that is very technical and they can cover some of the technical side, you might hire a solution engineer that is a bit more commercial, that maybe is helping to bridge that gap between engineering and the sales team. If you have a team that is a bit lighter on the technical side, so if you have a sales team that is kind of really light on the technical side, then you might look for someone as a pre-sales that is way more technical because they can bring that knowledge in and they can handle those harder questions in the sales team that the sales team was not able to handle. So at the beginning, I think it's really a balance, but then the balance keeps be the number one criteria to hire. So for me, I always look for, as I said, creativity and curiosity, because if you're not curious, you will not be able to solve the problem in 6 months' time that the customer will have because they will be different from the one of today. But then at a specific point in time, I might interview a candidate that seems like a great candidate and is a great technical skill. But if I have a heavily technical core in my team, that would not be the right candidate because I always try to balance the skill set. But in 6 months down the line, or maybe my team is more skewed on the commercial skill set, that would be the perfect candidate. So for candidate perspective, is also be having the right timing, unless you're one of those rare unicorn that you're really, really good at both sides. But then that where the seniority factor becomes important because again, in a growing team, you also want to make sure you keep the seniority balance. And that is important, especially for people that are maybe a first-time manager and you have a good pipeline of candidates. If you feel everybody's great, you would like to have all the best, just the best. Then the issue you will have is in a growing business, you will not always have exciting and complex problem to solve for everybody. So you need to make sure that everybody has enough to be challenged. And if you have everybody super senior and you have small account that you're selling to and smaller deal that are more velocity and simple problem and just about the quantity, those more senior people will not really be excited by that probably. So you need to make sure you have people at the right level that can be excited by that. And also at the same time, you will give these more senior people the opportunity to practice coaching, to be positioning themselves as an expert in the team, helping the more junior people to develop and learn the job. That gives them also something else to be excited about that is not just the customer facing. So that is really the true dimension I would use at any point in time. Assess how is your team balance, assess how is the engagement that you need to have, like how complex these are, how large account, and then decide what is your next best hire at that specific point in time.
So like with the next question, I would like to like lead a bit into performance. But before we will jump into like particularly how to measure performance of particular people, which I think it's given the fact that what you said that there are different skills, different profiles, this is an interesting topic. I would also like to ask you a question, like once again from the management perspective, so more of a entire team perspective. As a manager, as a founder, like you have the sales team, you have engineering teams, product teams, and now like you either consider or invest into the solution engineering team, like no matter how big it is. What kind of ROI, pragmatically speaking, what kind of ROI should you expect in order to say, okay, it makes sense to invest in this team and to keep this team, and what are the outcomes, effects of solution engineering team in your organization you should expect?
Yeah, so ideally the number one metric you should expect is increased sales. So you should see a higher number of deal that close. Now, the important piece is to understand when the solution engineer is actually engaged in the sales process. So the solution engineer is usually not the one that goes out and look for new customers. So you will not see an increasing pipeline. So if in any given month you have 100 customers that you're able to approach, that number will stay the same. What you should see is actually a change on the conversion of those customers after they reach a certain stage. So initially, even when you reach out to this customer, there is an initial discovery where the salesperson is engaging, trying to say, okay, is there really a need? Do they really need our product or not? We usually don't get involved there because if someone says, no, actually, I don't need to do identity verification because in my country, the regulation doesn't require, there's no way to convince them that there is a need. So that will not change. So you will lose some of those 100 at that stage. But then from the next phase on, that's where you should expect with the solution engineer on board an increase in the conversion, meaning that all those customers that you were losing because they were not convinced you could actually solve their problem, or all those customers that you were losing because as soon as they start looking at the product, they're just confused, they don't understand how the product should be used, how the product should be actually integrated. Maybe they overestimate the effort on their side to integrate the product in their environment. All those customers are customers that the solution engineer should help you to win. So the conversion of that stage, and you can call it as you want, we call it business validation, the part about identifying there is a pain and we have a solution for the pain. Technical validation, that is the part where it says, okay, we can actually integrate this product quickly. We understand how to do it. Our engineering team can quickly do it. That is a technical validation. Those two are the phase where we have the most impact. So that would be the number one metric of success. Now, if it's the very first time you introduce a solution engineer, you might also notice that your product team or engineering team will possibly become a bit more productive because now they're not using all those hours to support the sales team and the sales request.
Cool. Then heading into this individual performance, let's say, like you mentioned that, for example, in your team, you have those three pillars. So, of course, driving sales, helping the product, and then collaboration. You mentioned that you hire people for curiosity. This is, let's say, in a way, hard to quantify. Are they curious enough, or if this curiosity is steering them in the right direction? So how to and you also mentioned that there are different profiles. So you will be having those people who are more into tech, so maybe a bit more into the product. You will have those who have more business background, so maybe a little bit leaning forward, more into the sales part. How do you know that your team members are performing, and what kind of KPIs you use to track it, and to track all those various aspects of the role?
Yeah, so there are different school of thought, and different company might track more or less thing. So on a strictly performance base in Onfido, we only have one metric that we track, and that is the one that is used to pay the commission of the people in my team. That is actually the booking, so that the business they help closing. So that is the only hard metric we use. And to stress the focus on the third pillar, actually everyone in the team doesn't have a personal quota, but they work toward the regional quota. So instead of saying, let's drop a number, everyone in the team has 1 million of business to close, they will all work toward the, let's say, 10 million quota for their region. Could be, if they're in Europe, that would be Europe. That meaning that if someone closes a deal, everybody is paid a bit for that deal in the region. But at the same time, when this person doesn't close a deal, but someone else closes a deal, he is also paid for that little bit of his contribution to the deal, team success. So that is the number one KPI. There are multiple ways. Some places they have individual quota, and that works when you have a clear alignment with a specific pre-sales person with a salesperson. They don't change over a year. They really work on silos on a specific industry or a specific customer base. That can work. Then another metric that is usually more like performance metric, is not related to the compensation, is this conversion rate. So you can measure actually the percent of deal that once they reach business validation or technical validation are actually closed. And then in this way, you can compare in the team who has a higher conversion rate and lower conversion rate. Doing in that way makes the measure a bit more resistant, robust against the fact that someone can be aligned with the salesperson that brings in a lot of deals. Someone can be aligned in the region where there are less deals. But once a deal is qualified, they should both be able to convert with a similar percent. So that is one way of measuring. Then I think the other piece is it becomes really important having good team lead that can actually assess what is not quantifiable with the metric. So, for example, the contribution to product on our side is one that is very difficult to quantify because we don't release. We're not one of those companies that release 20 products every year. So we can't really say how many new beta products you implemented because usually we have one or two per year. So you only need a couple of beta customers. So that will not work. And then we don't really have hard metrics on how much you helped building this feature, right? So it's more about the team lead having a good grasp and good understanding of everybody in the team and how they are kind of pulling their weight in the conversation. But what we measure, and again, is a soft measure, so we don't really have a rating based on that only, but it's like, how do you contribute back to the team? And that's the third pillar. how much are you helping the team to succeed? And that is something that we measure on a quarterly basis on a lot of different things. So we use a wiki to share the knowledge. So we measure, for example, how many contribution everybody does, how many pages you write, how many edit you make, how many comment you add to a wiki. That's to share the knowledge in a written form. Also, we measure how many sessions you organize for the team. So on a bi-weekly basis, we have we call it learn and share, where everybody in the team can either organize a session or coordinate a session, meaning you bring someone from the business in to talk about something you think is relevant to the team. Meaning, maybe you learn something working with the customer and say, actually, this is very interesting. I think everybody in the team would like to know more. So you coordinate a session where you bring that knowledge back to the team. And we track, again, in a very soft way, who contributes the most, who is actually adding value. And those are all things that we consider at the end of the year when we do a performance review. So we go back to the three pillars and say, okay, these are the three values, the three stream. And then as a company, we have values that we align with, that is take pride or learning or sharing knowledge or being an expert, for example. And we say, okay, for this level of seniority, this level of seniority on, for example, product announcement means you need to be owning at least one or two core product or core feature. And then we do a qualitative assessment. But being qualitative, and I realize I'm going long, but being qualitative on this means that you can't just do it at the end of the year. You want to have a conversation. So in our team, and especially the leadership team, we defined a cadence of every month to have a personal development conversation with people in your team, where you discuss, hey, out of these three pillars, for your level, we know this is the general expectation. So let's talk about what you're doing and what should be doing more to make sure that you are successfully performing against or even above and beyond that level on that pillar. So even if we don't have an hard metric, having this monthly conversation really help to see if people are on track, because it's a time to pause and think, okay, am I really contributing to making the product better? What did I do about that last month? And then maybe the answer is nothing, because I was working on a very big client engagement, but I can make the conscious effort next month to focus more on that.
You like, at first, like, we focused mostly on this on this sales function, let's say, but you also then mentioned a lot of interesting points about this contribution to product and collaboration. So I would like to follow up on that part and ask for your, like, for your tips and tricks on how to organize this work between solution engineering team and the product team, how they can, bring those insights in an efficient way. Like, from my experience, when I work with companies, usually product companies, they usually don't struggle with not enough ideas. I would rather say they struggle with having too many ideas and too many possibilities, opportunities, and then they need to, in the right way, prioritize things. So any tips on how the solution engineering team can efficiently work and bring those insights, bring those ideas to the product teams?
Yeah, so we do that in two ways. I think a good way to prioritize. So there are two ways to go to market. Now, is like you can either decide, okay, this feature I know is going to be the future, so I want to build it. I want to build this stuff because I know I'm going to create a category. People don't be like what Apple is doing. People don't know they want a touchscreen phone, but we build it because we know they will want it. And that is, I think, is more like the inside out. So the product has this big bet of big ideas, and they built it themselves. And there isn't much you can do on that besides trying to maybe talk with some customer that you have a good relationship and see what is their interest in that. But often, if the idea is bold and innovative enough, they will not know. They might say, "Oh, I don't know. Seems interesting, but I don't know." Right? And then there is the other piece where you're trying to build something for the market, And that's where you find yourself maybe with a backlog of 50 features to build and the capacity to build 10 in a quarter. So I think that's where you want to have a way to prioritize. So the way we prioritize are two measures. One is the amount of customers that will actually be using that and that have been requesting that. And the other is the size of the deal that will come from those customers based on that feature. And I think the importance there of working with the solution engineering team is to avoid that the loudest voice win. Because if you have a salesperson that is very vocal and that deal will make their quota, doesn't matter if it's only single customer that will always use it once and never again and never anyone after. They will be so loud that you will be biased to think, oh, maybe it's very important. This person is very passionate about that and they speak with the customer every day. But then you lose the vision of what about the other customer now? While working with the solution engineering team helps in saying, you can say, go back. And that's something that the product team does often. They come to me and say, hey, we are prioritizing these three things because we feel these are the most important from what we understood speaking with sales, solution engineering. Can you get the feedback from your team if it's really true that there is demand? And can you get maybe more insight from them on other customers that are asking for this feature? And then we provide that insight that comes from a knowledge of the whole customer base we have. So that is the way we help prioritizing. And then instead for the size of the deals, usually that is something that is more accurate, even from the salespeople can come in a more accurate way. But really having that temperature of, is this really something the market asks for, or is just something one customer asks for? That's where we can provide that value.
And then how to foster this collaboration, like any specific tools or ways on how to foster this collaboration, let's say between product managers and solution engineers?
Yeah, so definitely tool wise, I think we use a tool, it's called product board. There are more, it's basically a tool where you can aggregate all the insight and that's the product team to get them. But there are multiple tools. I think the key on a human level is to build that trust that the product team needs to feel you are their partner. Well, usually product and sales, there is always this friction where sales complain, you give me something that I cannot sell, and product complain, by the time I'm building something, you already change your mind and you want something else. So that is the kind of the common friction. But building the trust with the solution engineer and the product is the key. And that happens on two sides. First, being technical, usually we kind of speak the same language. And especially if you come from the technical side of the solution engineering spectrum, you've been an engineer before, so you know the struggle of the development flow, like what it means to build something that is robust enough to ship it into the market. That even if it's just 3 lines of code, there might be a lot of regression tests and things that make it more complex to build. So you can have realistic expectation of the effort required when you talk about a need. And that builds trust. And also, I think making the product team feel that you are helping them to do a better job because their goal is to build something cool. And the product manager ultimately wants to see that product used. So as soon as they release something, in fact, the product manager is always kind of coming to us, hey, how many people are using? Hey, are they happy? Or they like it? Because that's what really drives them. Build something useful. So if you position yourself as that person that helps them to build something even better, even more useful than if they build it themselves, that's how you build that trust. And then you can have the hard conversation of saying, hey, this doesn't work. Customers don't want to use it like that. Because you're not attacking them, but you're actually helping them to achieve their goal. And that's the key, I think, for a good collaboration.
So like we were touching a lot on the topic on scalability of the team, scalability of collaboration, etc. I have a feeling that we could even discuss it for the next hour, but I would like to also pick your brain on one more topic. Like as a last part of our conversation, I would like to as working on Onfido at the global level, I bet you have a lot of interesting insights. Probably some of those are secret, but My question would be is, are there any hot trends in digital identity that you see? Anything that that is booming or is going to boom in the next months and quarters to come? Like I'm, for example, thinking about modern threats with AI, or any other similar topics that might impact the identity industry.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very interesting space. And taking a step back, what identity verification does is basically try to prevent fraud, and specifically impersonation fraud, right? That is the type of fraud where you pretend to be someone else and you do something wrong or bad. Then if you think about that, the way we do identity verification today is usually a picture of a document, a physical document, most of those, and then next layer of security on top is a biometric to make sure you are the person on the document and you didn't just find the picture online. So back 10 years ago, probably 15, if you think about a counterfeit document, you imagine those images of someone in a basement cutting their photo and stitching it on the passport, right? And that was a physical forgery. So that was like you take a physical document and you forger it to change something. You can add a letter, change the date of birth, or change the photo. That is a forgery. And then kind of started proliferating the physical counterfeit. So documents that were start from the beginning fake, but fake reproduction of original that looks so good they could pass checks in the physical world. Now everything is digital, and being digital means everything is faster. So once you find a way to make a digital counterfeit or a digital forgery of a document, you find a way once, and if you go through the system, you can spot, okay, there is a vulnerability. You can easily make 100 variation of that fake document. So now, instead of creating one fake account and then potentially take another hour to create another one, in seconds, you can create 100. So that is the main issue that we're seeing. And that was only on document, because you have things like Photoshop that allow you, and that now everybody can use and master. But then we're seeing the same problem on biometric. So initially it was a static selfie. Now the biometric check are mostly active videos. So they ask you to turn your head, spell out some digit. And those were kind of safe because there was not an easy way to alter those. With deepfake in the last year and a half, we saw a spike. Like in the last year, we saw 3,000 times, 3,000% increase in deepfake on biometric, because those tools are easily accessible. So now everybody can download some easy tool that allow to swap their face for the one of George Clooney or Taylor Swift, for example. And those tools are becoming so good, so quick, and so cheap that is basically everybody can have it a go and see if they pass. So that is the biggest trend we're seeing, where these deepfake are everywhere. And again, if you are in a physical world, so you use a deepfake for something physical, for example, there was a scam a couple of months ago of audio deepfake, where in the US, they were impersonating Joe Biden voice and calling people at home to tell them to not go to vote because it was pointless. And if you target an older generation of vulnerable people, they are more likely to follow. But again, that is a scam in the physical world. So, you call them, you ask them to not do something. Even if you ask to do something, that still takes time to do, and so on. But when you bring it digital, if you have just a 2-second video of you turning your head and that opens an account and that goes through, you can scale the same attack to 100 or 1,000 in a few minutes. So that is the trend. And that's where we're really focusing also at Onfido, to really learn how to identify this deep fake and this impersonation, because that is the most growing trend at the moment.
When thinking about identity as a follow-up to this, the first thing that comes to mind is actually like a bank account or any administrative work, or some transactions, that the bigger transactions that you need to verify, parties in the transaction. But should we expect this, identity verification or some kind of, third-party authority providing this verification seamlessly to other parts of our lives, like you mentioned, calls, for example? Should we expect in the following years that we will see like a secure connection, verified identity of the caller?
Yes, so that's definitely a growing pain for businesses. And last year, again, it was in the news a few times. There were a couple of big casinos in Vegas. They were attack of ransomware where someone impersonated an employee with a very high access right in their system, and they got their password reset, they intercepted that, and they managed to access the internal system. And they basically locked the whole company system for the MGM and then the Caesar in Las Vegas, locking everyone out. Nobody could log in, and people were not able to withdraw money or gamble in the casino. And they were basically, the company didn't know what to do until they paid the ransomware and they were kind of freed up. So what is coming up now is really try to introduce this biometric check or a true identity check in high risk moment of identification, even in a workforce environment. So to check employees. So for example, I don't know what you use and what people use, but start to be quite common in tech companies. When you access, you have your username and password, and then sometimes you have a YubiKey or an ART token connected to your laptop, or you have a companion app, like for example, Okta or Entrust Identity Access Management, where you get a push notification on your phone to say, oh, it's actually you, it's a two-factor authentication, so we trust and we let you log in the system. So now what you will see more and more is that if you are maybe an admin and you're trying to perform a very crucial activity in the system, that can be, for example, changing the credential of a certain number of users or access restricted data, you might be asked to step up even more. It says, okay, you have the phone, you have the password, but take a quick selfie so we can check you are the person that we originally employed. And we check that selfie or that motion video against the document that you provided at the time of becoming an employee. And that is adding friction. So definitely is not something you can do, for example, to access your email, but is the friction that brings the value out. So that is a justifiable friction. And that can also be triggered by the fact you are on a new device, maybe. If you're on your user device, on your user IP from home, maybe that will not be triggered, but there will be a risk assessment of when to trigger that. So definitely, yes, it's something that is coming to our day-to-day life more and more.
Thank you. So this is shield and sword race. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. Thank you very much for sharing your tips and tricks and lessons learned from scaling the team. And thank you for being with me and with our audience today, sharing your wisdom and experience. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. I'm grateful for your invite, and I hope this can be useful for people that are scaling a team, scaling a company, or even people that are looking for a transition in their career from an engineering role to something different without losing their technical involvement and technical touch, because that was my journey. I didn't know the role existed until I stumbled on it, and it's the best job in the world for me now. So I'm glad I found it.
Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day.